Hi there friends, welcome back to the channel. In today's class, what I'd love to do is share with you a technique to get rid of reflections in glasses. Now, before I go into the edit process and show you the really cool tricks, I just want to talk about how do we actually resolve this at camera level. Now, on my screen, I have this portrait of a little guy, and as you can see, we've got all of these green reflections in these glasses. You can see that there's a light that's coming through the tree line behind the shooting position, and it's reflecting off the glasses, and you can see that there's this green tint. Now, the way in order to get rid of those reflections in his glasses, in this case, would be to ask him to keep his chin down a little bit. What we always try to do is change the angle of incidence of light to glasses. Now, if I go back to my own gallery, this is actually one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to make this class today, is that I don't actually have this problem because I'm trying to solve it at camera level. Now you can see that this little guy has got no reflections in his glasses. And the reason behind that is because I'm trying to change the angle of incidence to that light. Now, if I go a little bit ahead here, look at his chin position. His chin position is raised just a little bit. And the minute he did that, we started to see that little bit of a reflection in his glasses. However, when we look at this position here where his chin's down a little bit, you can see that there's no reflections in the glasses. And this is something that I'm trying to correct at camera level whilst I'm shooting. Now, for those of you who haven't been able to resolve this issue and need to correct it in post, this session is for you. So let's go back to Photoshop. Right now, I'm inside of the beta version of Photoshop. If you want to follow along with this tutorial, you need to have the beta version of Photoshop. Let me show you how to deal with it within seconds. Okay, yes, you heard me right, within seconds. What we want to do in this case is go to our object selection tool. And what we're going to do is just make a quick selection around the glasses like this. Okay, we're going to grab all of the glasses. I'm going to try and get as close as we can to the glasses, and it will auto select the glasses right there. What we want to do now is make sure that we click on generative fill and we switch this model to Flux Kontext Pro. Let's click it there, and all I'm going to do is just type in there, remove the reflections from the glasses, and I'm going to press enter, and that will generate that result for us. So let's wait for it to poll and see what results we get. Look at that, my friends. That is absolutely amazing. In a couple of seconds, we've gotten rid of the reflections in the little guy's glasses. How amazing is that? Let's just go and look exactly what it was. The prompt that I used here was remove the reflections from the glasses, and the model was Flux Kontext Pro, and that dealt with that issue straight away. If your results don't align with the eyes that you have in your image, you can always go back and generate a second copy. Let's do that now and see how different the results are. I love this. It's something that solves a lot of problems for us as portrait photographers. Look at that. You can see that in this case, we got a couple more of the eyebrow in the top end of the glasses. Let's just go before and after. If we look at the prior result, you can see that there's fewer strands on the eyebrows, but it's up to you. You can choose which result you like better, but look at that. The reflections are gone. Now, folks, this is just one example. Let's move on to another example. I'm going to approach this from exactly the same standpoint. I'm going to go over to my object selection tool and going to make a quick selection of those glasses like we done before. There we go. Let's close that off and let it auto select his glasses. So what I'm going to do is click generate fill, make sure that I'm still on the Flux Kontext Pro model, and we're going to type there, remove the reflections from the glasses, press enter, and let's wait for those results to pop up. Now, these results are dynamic. They change and we don't always get the same results. And this is why I'm going through several different images in this class. I want to get a broad selection of the different situations. As you can see here, some of the reflections are removed. The green tint, for example, is removed, but we have an issue where not everything is being removed. And the reason why is because the reflections in his glasses cover a great portion of his eye. It's not like this previous one where they only covered the top end of the glasses, and the Kontext Flux Pro model worked very nicely. In this case over here, it's not really working. Now we can go ahead and generate another version to see if we get a different result. Okay, if the result doesn't work straight away, always give it a chance to regenerate another version of the glasses to see if it does correct it. So let's wait for that result to poll. And there we go. Okay, so it hasn't changed much again. We need to take a different approach in this instance. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that layer, and what we're going to do is actually make a broader selection across his face. I'm going to go over to the lasso tool in this instance, and I'm going to come over past the ears and past the nose and make a really broad selection across his face. And there's a reason for it, but we'll get to that in a moment. What I'm going to do is click Generate Fill, and I'm going to switch the model to Gemini 2.5. And I'm going to type here, remove the glasses. I'm switching back to the Gemini 2.5 model because it deals with complex instructions very, very well. So in this case, my instruction is remove the glasses, and I'm going to click Generate. Now this sounds amazingly impossible to do this in a click, but it works. Watch this. I'm going to click Generate, and it's going to remove his glasses. Let's wait for the magic to happen. So you're going to be asking me, well, Dan, we don't want to get rid of his glasses. We want his glasses on. That's him. So bear with me. As you can see, the returned result has misaligned. It's not aligning to anything. What we need to do is bring it back into proper alignment, and you can see that it's also stretched out the result. So this is one of the little drawbacks in beta at the moment. The returned results from Gemini 2.5 get stretched or they get misaligned. What I'm going to do is just help you realign everything. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and I'm going to move this over until I see that it kind of lines up. But you can actually see straight away here how amazing that result is. The eye color, the eyebrows, everything is in place. This is him. It hasn't changed him, but it's stretched the results. Now, what I want to do in order for me to make sure that I'm lining up everything very nicely, I'm going to change my blend mode of this remove glasses layer to difference. Okay, you're going to ask me, why is that? If I switch this to difference like this, what I'm going to do is move this around until I get a completely black image. That means that those elements are perfectly aligned. So let's do that right now. The black area tells us that those areas that we are adjusting are completely aligned with each other. So you can see over here, this isn't quite aligned, and you can see that the nostrils aren't quite aligned just yet, but we're going to work on that. There we go. Somewhere there. Look at that. Perfectly aligned. We might have to bring this area out here and bring this down here. But effectively, what I'm trying to do is just align his eyes back to the original eyes and the ears and the nose. This is why I made that larger selection. So let's just bring that down just a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, because remember, we are looking to put back those glasses. So let's go and change the blend mode back to normal, and you'll see that it's not quite aligned there very nicely. So we're just going to bring that up over there, and I'm holding Shift while I actually move this little adjustment point here. There we go. That is about as aligned as it's going to get. So what we're going to do now is throw away this mask that it auto created. So I'm going to take it and put it in the bin like that. I'm going to create a mask on that layer of my own, and with it selected, I'm going to invert the mask to hide away what essentially we've created here. So there we go. There's the original image. And all I'm going to do now, whilst on the mask, is paint with white inside the glasses. Check this out. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to grab my brush tool. I'm going to make sure that it's set to white, and I'm going to paint away those reflections in the eyes. Let's start at the top here. Look at that. Okay. As I get close to the edge of the glasses, I'm just going to obviously select a finer brush and just brush away those reflections. Look at that. Even into the eyes over here in the middle of the glasses, I can simply increase the size of my brush as I get closer to the edges of those glasses. I don't want them to disappear, but I obviously just want to paint away those reflections. Something like that. Okay, look at that, my friends. This is absolutely incredible. It's such an easy way to deal with reflections. So in this case here, what we had to do is get rid of the glasses and show his eyes underneath the glasses, and then put the glasses back on in a reverse order. There we go. Look at that. I'm just painting over to the edges of the frame of the glasses. If you go over the edge, just make sure you paint it back in. But look at that, my friends. We got rid of those reflections in the glasses, and we've put back his original eyes in the frame. Look at that. I'm going to switch it off and back on. You can always adjust the opacity to get a little bit more realism there, just to fade out those results. But look at that, my friends. We have fixed the crazy glare and reflections in his glasses. Let's go and look at this example here. This is quite extreme. We've got two things going on. We've got the reflection from the strobes. This is the softbox, and we've got all of these purple colors in her glasses. So let's try a similar approach. We're going to make a object selection and paint around the glasses like this. And we are going to use the generative fill option again, and we're going to switch it to Flux Kontext Pro, and we're going to type in remove the reflections from the glasses. I will always use the Flux Kontext Pro option first. If it doesn't get rid of the reflections in the glasses, then I switch over to the other model where we remove the glasses completely and then put them back on afterwards. Let's see what exactly happens in this image. Is it going to be able to get rid of the purple and the kickback from the flash? In this instance, you can see there's the round softbox. It's a little bit distorted on this one over here, which is kind of strange. But as you can see, it's trying to remove them, but it's not quite getting there. So all that means is that we need to remove that layer, and we are then again going to make a broad selection, maybe across the nose, just like that. And we're going to go generative fill. I'm going to type remove the glasses, just like we did before, and make sure that the model is set to Gemini 2.5. And we're going to click generate, and that's going to remove the glasses from her face. I know, guys, this sounds mental, but it's wow. Check out what happens in these results. I was blown away when I tried this first. Look at that, okay? Bam, no glasses. And in this case here, the returned results are quite aligned. But just to make sure that it is aligned properly, we are going to switch to the difference view. And you can see that we've got all of that blacks, and it seems to align just fine. Let's go back to the normal view. We're going to chuck away the mask, and then we're going to add our own mask to it, and then we're going to invert the mask to put the glasses back on. And all we're going to do is paint with white on our black mask to reveal the clean eyes underneath. So again, same thing, just paint in over those reflections, and voila, Bob's your uncle. All of those reflections have disappeared. It's amazing, my friends. Something like this in the past would have taken a substantial amount of time to sort out masking and color correcting and doing all of these crazy tricks. But today we're learning something new, and we're using AI in our workflow to solve these little issues, these common issues that we are faced with as portrait photographers. Look at that, okay? I'm not making a perfect mask, but you get the message. Look at that. Before and after. No more reflections. Let's have a look at one last example. And this one is a little bit different because we've got two things. We've got those transitional glasses where the guy's eyes look a little bit darker, the skin tones look a bit darker, but we've also got some reflections in the eyes. So let's see how we are going to deal with this one. We are going to grab our quick selection tool again and make a selection of the glasses just like that. And we are then going to go to the generative fill, switch it back to Flux Kontext Pro, and then we're going to say exactly the same thing. Remove the reflections from the glasses, and we're going to hit enter, and let's see how it deals with transitional glasses with the reflections. Now, transitional glasses isn't something that I really change for people, but if you do want to change it and bring back the original brightness over the eyes, you can do this method. There we go. Okay, so you can see that it's removed the reflections in the glasses perfectly fine, but it hasn't done much to the actual color of the lenses. If you want to get that brightness back in those lenses, you can add in a mask and brighten it. But let's just try that other method that I showed you before. So what we're going to do is grab our lasso tool, and again we're just going to make a selection across the ears, across the nose, and above the glasses. And I'm going to make sure that we've got Gemini 2.5 selected, and I'm going to type remove the glasses and press enter, and we'll wait for those results to poll. And this still blows me away. How it knows how to get rid of things and put things back into place. It's just mind-blowing. I can't even fathom how it's doing this. There we go. Look at that. That's him without glasses. And again, it's slightly misaligned things, but we can grab this little side here and just pull it in a tiny little bit. Again, we can still use our difference blend mode to make sure that everything's aligned. You can see that it's slightly misaligned here. We can just bring it back until the ear changes to black, and this side again, just to make sure that it's really aligned properly. It'll turn black once it is, and we can switch it back to the normal mode and throw away the mask, make our own mask over that, and invert it to bring back the glasses. And like I said before, we'll grab our paintbrush tool, make sure that it's set to white, and we're going to start painting on the black mask to reveal the underlying eyes. Look at that. This is just absolutely incredible, my friends. Just paint within the frame of the glasses, just like that. Now, you can, of course, go and adjust the hardness of your brush, so you can easily come along the edges over here and brush it in without it being too soft. There we go. Right up to the edges of the frame of the glasses, keeping it nice and neat. And again, over this side, the same thing, getting rid of those reflections. And of course, it being transition glasses, also bringing back the brightness of the eyes, just like that. And obviously, if you want to keep it real, you can adjust the opacity just to bring it back and have a little bit of the reflections included. But there you have it. We've solved the issue with the transition glasses and of course those reflections in those transitionals. So there you have it, friends. We've gone through a variety of samples, getting rid of reflections in two different ways. One using the Flux Kontext Pro approach, and the other removing glasses completely with Gemini 2.5 and then putting them back onto our subjects and then just painting in the eyes afterwards, like we've done here, and solving those issues. Friends, thank you so much for all of the massive support. I really appreciate it. And again, I just want to thank all of the members that have contributed their images to this tutorial today. Thank you so much again. And I hope this is an eye-opener and you'll be able to go out there and understand how to position your subjects in the right light to prevent those reflections in the first place. And of course, if you have got images where you've got issues with reflections in the glasses, this is the really easy way to deal with that effectively and realistically. Thank you so much again, and we'll see you in the next class. Ciao for now.